Has it been a while since you've seen those?
Yes, it has been a while. Yes,
What's your reaction?
that I'm really proud. I'm really proud of that work. That was a part that I was extremely reticent to take
Which
on.
one? Which one?
Um, oh, the side house, Mr. Rose, the side house rules, the last clip that you showed.
Okay.
Um, um, I was very reticent, and it turned out pretty well from the standpoint of, despite what Mr. Rose does, um, I what audiences told me, what people who saw the work have said to me, was that I was still able to bring a humanity to that person. As far as Ransom is concerned, I hadn't seen it in years, and um, again, a wonderful ensemble. Well, not really an ensemble. You know, Mel Gibson was the star, but a wonderful group of actors working together, and very. Ransom was one of the most creatively rewarding rehearsal periods that I've had on
Talk
film.
about
Working on,
that. Talk about Ron Howard was the director.
yeah, it came down to the fact that Ron is, my recollection is that Ron was incredibly amenable and actor friendly in the process. And because I had fairly recently worked on Clockers uh, with Richard Price, and Richard was the screenwriter on Ransom, we had a connection. And so I remember it's just rich. The rehearsal process was rich. And I remember because of my relationship with Richard, and because Ron was as amenable as he was, I was able to infuse into the character and into the rehearsal process. I made some suggestions which Ron took on board. Small, but still creatively rewarding. And when an actor, and I'm sure any actor will tell you this, when you as an actor are working with a director who is open to your input, that makes the world of difference. And even though the script pretty much was what it was, um, I recall in the rehearsal process making these suggestions, and those suggestions being included in the into the work process, and that was very affirming.
Well, that scene with Rene Russo was there's a lot going on there.
Yeah,
There's stuff she doesn't know. There's stuff you know.
yeah.
It looked like you worked on that pretty well to figure it out. Do you remember?
Wonderful saying, because exactly as you said, there's a lot that's unspoken, there's a lot that's unsaid. There's a bunch of stuff about her husband, played by Mel Gibson, that Renee does not know, and that's juicy stuff to kind of play with. And there was a lot of subtext in that scene.
Yes, exactly. So Cider House Rules was actually, an Oscar-winning movie, and Lassie Hallstrom was adapting the John Irving novel. Uh, I was just wondering what made you uncomfortable about doing that role. What was it that disturbed you about it?
I guess it's 20 years after the fact now, so I can say this, I guess, without letting anything out of the bag. But obviously, Mr. Rose impregnates his daughter, so that has an
Figured.
incestuous relationship. Well, okay. The suggestion is that Mr. Rose has entered into an incestuous relationship with his daughter. What we do know is that Rose is impregnated by her father, played by me, Mr. Rose. I was deeply uncomfortable with that whole narrative. And what caused me to be able to do the work and play that part is because I found what I hoped would be the humanity in Mr. Rose, specifically vis-a-vis my daughter. I decided that rather than having engaged in an incestuous ongoing relationship, that's not what happened. This is how I rationalize it in my own head. That's not what happened. So it's not as if I have an ongoing incestuous relationship with her. What I decided for myself was that um, I have a deep, 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 and genuine love for my daughter. And that was real. And that comes out in a scene between Tobey Maguire and I in the orchard, in which I say to him very emphatically, I love her, right? And what I decided was the genuine and real and authentic love that I have for my daughter on this one occasion tipped over into the physical realm. And that's when she became pregnant. That was the way that I rationalized it for myself. And so that the basis of the relationship between myself, Mr. Rose, and Rose, beautifully played by Erykah Badu, the basis of the relationship was a very real and genuine and protective love that I have for her, that on this one occasion tipped over into becoming actual physical, actually a physical act. That was the way that I rationalized it. And can I say one
So
other thing, or are we on a time crunch? Can I say one
no,
other
we're
thing?
not. We're not. We're
Great.
ahead.
Okay, so what I will say about that, about having played Mr. Rose and engaged in that work, um, I was deeply affirmed one evening. I don't know, maybe a year or so after the film had been released, and my wife and I were having dinner in a restaurant. We'd had a meal in Berkeley, and had walked out of the restaurant, and we were walking to our car, and a lady came running up behind me and said, Mr. Lindo, can I talk to you? Sorry to interrupt, but can I talk to you? I said, sure. And she said to me, I'm a victim. I saw the film, and I'm a victim of that. I forget how she put it, but basically she was saying that she had been sexually abused as a young lady. And I appreciate the humanity that you brought to what you did. And I was deeply affirmed in that moment.
Do you have a sense of, and I'm curious about this, whether it's the theater or film or TV, do you have a sense of who your audience is and people, identifying with you in a certain way or a sense of responsibility to people who are looking at your work?
I absolutely feel I have a sense of responsibility, no question. And I'd like to believe, and I hope this doesn't sound arrogant, I'd like to believe that my audience is fairly broadly based, because of the kinds of responses and reactions and comments that I get from the work that I've done, from people who have seen my work. Um, I know we're going to talk about Bloods later on, but I've heard from various vets who've said to me they feel seen by
Mm,
what we did in Bloods. I remember many, many years ago in New York, I was on Park Avenue, um, and I think I was, I don't know, going to the dentist or something. I don't remember, but I parked my car on Park Avenue. I'd gotten out of my car, and you remember in the 80s, uh, the bicycle messengers, the ubiquitous bicycle messengers. There were cats on bikes all over the city. Actually, it wasn't. It was the '90s. It was the '90s, early mid 1990s. I parked my car. I got out of my car, and a bicycle messenger sped past me. A young African American gentleman. He sped past me, and he looked back and saw it was me, and he put a brake on his bike. He turned around and he said to me, now, before I say what he said to me, um, will you beat me if I curse? Because he said something that was very colorful. You won't, but I'm going to say it anyhow. Is that all right? Or am I going to get into trouble or something?
You're fine.
Okay.
How bad?
So
Go for it.
this bicycle messenger, when he saw it was me, he looked back and he stopped. He turned around. He said, "Hey, man, I love you in the movies, man. You know why I love you in the movies, man?" And I said, "No, why you love me in the movies, bro?" And he said, "Don't nobody fuck with you in the movies, man. I love that. Don't nobody fuck with you in the movies." And then he got on his bike and went on. What that meant to me, I didn't ask him, "What have you seen that I've done?" Didn't ask him anything. But what that meant to me was that whatever it is that he had seen resonated for him. And that was affirming. Um,
All
one
right.
other story, one other little anecdote I'll tell you. In Rome, my wife and I were in Rome in 1997. We were about to go down the Spanish Steps to do some shopping. And a gentleman came up to me and said, "Delroy Lindo." And I said, "Yeah, hey, man, how are you?" Couldn't speak. He couldn't speak English, but he knew my name. Italian gentleman in the middle of Rome. So, to your question about who the audience is and how the impact that I have on the audience is, I'd like to believe it's broad,
I think it
and
is. I
that's
think it is.
very
All right,
affirming.
we're gonna look at clips now from Romeo Must Die, speaking of
Ah,
broad, and Da Five Bloods. We're getting up
all
to the
right.
good stuff.